The only people that matter.
The only people that matter, right?
You guys are catching on.
I guess we'll start. Is it 11?
Mhm.
Happy New Year, Mike.
Happy
Michael?
New Year.
Yeah, thank you. Well, there's Leslie.
I just sent Ashley a text.
Okay, thanks. Now we just finished talking and I wanted to get in here and do this, so. Here we go. Are we ready? Time lending is on.
Well, I will.
All you.
All me. I'll just keep it short and sweet. Basically, interest rates moving into this year have already seen a decrease. When the Fed announced last month that they weren't gonna raise rates and they'd actually consider lowering rates within 2024, the market kind of jumped ahead of itself a little bit, a little cart before the horse, or yeah, wait, after the horse action going on. So you saw interest rates go down pretty substantially. They're working their way back up a little bit, nothing too crazy. But I wouldn't expect to see interest rates decrease as quickly as they did. I think the market just reacted to that news very positively, and then it's kind of steadied out a little bit. We will, I think, see rates decrease by the end of the year into, what are we at right now? About probably low sixes overall, maybe high fives is what I would guess if the Fed sticks to what they're doing. The federal funds rate doesn't directly impact mortgage rates, but it can nudge them in certain directions, which is kind of what you're seeing just based on the news that they gave, is kind of pointing in the direction that we should see them decrease. So with that, just keep an eye on it. There's a Fed's fund meeting at the end of January that will start to hopefully start the process of them lowering. I think they'll probably just hold steady. I hope they lower it, but I would expect them to either just hold steady, maybe lower a few points, and then we'll kind of see what they end up doing. That's all I really have. I mean, as far as strategies go, I know as interest rates come down, the properties are not sitting around as long. So, and then as we start to push through winter, I know we're right into starting winter, but as we push closer to spring, and if interest rates continue to come down, I think you'll see a little more and more competitiveness in the market, which will not necessarily be as easy to get seller paid closing costs, and other credits and maybe negotiations are a little bit harder. So just keep that in mind, that if people are on the fence, just remind them that, hey, if interest rates go down, you're going to start to compete with more and more people. So get in while you can. You can always change your interest rate, but you can't change the price. So something to consider moving forward. And then, yeah, that's really all I've got, is just interest rates are kind of remaining steady, and we'll see what they do come end of January when the Fed announces what they're going to be doing.
Fantastic. Does anyone have any questions regarding any interest rates or anything for Michael? Anybody?
Yeah. What is he seeing as far as applications? Does he feel like you're picking up, Michael?
Honestly, right now it's kind of dead a little bit. I mean, there's the trickle-ins here and there. Honestly, I think it's more has to do with the time of year. January, beginning of January, is usually pretty slow anyways. People are just getting out of the holidays. So yeah, I'm not seeing too much activity as far as increasing. But depending on what interest rates do, I mean, every time they do tick down, we did start to see a little bit more of an increased demand. But I think pair that with just it being the beginning of January, which is usually slow this time of year. People just aren't doing much. But compared to this time last year, when interest rates were really starting to rise pretty quickly, it's definitely a little bit busier for sure, as they've kind of settled in.
Cool. Yeah, I was just wondering what the I know it's January, but yeah, just with the interest rates coming down, if you're seeing a little bit more activity. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I don't know if you were in here when I was talking, but when the Fed announced late last year that they were gonna pause increases and potentially even start to lower,
Mhm.
the cart got ahead of the horse a little bit when it comes to interest rates decreasing. They came down for really no reason. There was no reason for them to come down. It just had to do with that news. And we've since seen them climb back up a little bit and steady out around the mid to high sixes. So I think if the Fed starts to actually decrease, I don't think we'll see as fast of a decrease in interest rates as we did when they announced the news.
Yeah.
Just because there's other aspects at play that I won't get into here that ultimately do affect interest rates and the market. One of them being news and emotions. But once those emotions start to steady out, we actually see where the market currently sits. And I wouldn't expect them to decrease that fast. I hope they do. And I hope we get some crazy news that they're going to just start cutting
Yeah.
and just tank, because that'd be great. But I would just keep your optimism very kind of leveled. But yeah, I think it'll be a good year. We went to a kind of a crystal ball event on the west side with Matthew Gardner, who's a real estate economist. And he thinks that, and he's been very right for many, many years. He thinks that by the end of the year, we'll be in the low sixes, if not the high fives, for the average 30-year fixed, which means that potentially people could buy down into the high fours, mid fives. So kind of levels off as far as where interest rates, where he thinks interest rates will end up, which would be awesome. That'd be great. Yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you. Scotland, man.
Um,
Michael, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Appreciate you. Okay, next slide. Scott, are you there?
hey, I sure am.
Scott Leroy, some of the new stuff happening this year. Take it away. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Thank you for having me on. So first and foremost, yes, a lot of new things happening this year, a lot of updates that are going on as well too. So definitely want to hop on here, just kind of come over, highlight some of the different items that we're currently doing on here, some of the new items that you'll actually see, a few items, and then I'll show in a second as well too that you're seeing on there. So I think a couple of things that are highlighted on the screen right now, obviously for the new KW Agent website. So if y'all have not upgraded to the new website, definitely something to take a look at on there. We do have a playlist of ways to kind of get upgraded to the site, and then different ways that we can help y'all out as well too, in addition to all of our different webinar options. So let me go ahead and show y'all a couple things on here real quick. Awesome, let's pull this up. So under our website, that's scottleroymarketing.com site, just remember the main way that you'll want to access everything is from your Market Center number of 1109. So once you log in, that'll give you access to all these different tools that are available on here. One thing I would highly suggest if y'all haven't done it quite yet, under our questionnaire section on the agent resources, definitely take advantage of that existing agent questionnaire. It's 6 questions, 2 of which are your first and last name, which will make it a little bit easier on there. But this is really meant for us to go through and do a full spot check of your entire account, just to make sure that you're up and running as a new agent would be in 2024. So think of it like a yearly check-in with the doctor to help you out even further. And then we do have that section on all the new KW Agent website updates, our entire playlist on here. If you're wanting to upgrade to the new site, obviously that just came out a couple months ago, and they'll be talking about it more at Family Reunion next month. But if you need help with that, please let us know. We can walk you through it. And then obviously once you have upgraded, there's a plethora of items we can help you all out with as well. Now, of course, remember, we do have live webinars happening every Monday through Friday, right at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So the class today just ended for this team meeting. But tomorrow we're going to have another one right at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And of course, you can find those classes under our training calendar on here. Or feel free to check out all of our recorded courses as well too. So if you can't make it to the class, they're all alphabetically organized on here. But once you click on them, it'll be chronologically organized to access that immediately on here as well. Now, my favorite thing to show y'all is going to be this agent support section. So scottleroymarketing.com, and I'll put it in our chat section on here. scottleroymarketing.com/, we have existing. So that's going to be the first one to focus on. And then scottleroymarketing.com/support. These will be two big items that you can utilize on here, specifically that second one. And these are all items that we can do for you. All right, so all these little red rectangles on here are items we can help you out with, whether it's help importing your contacts so you can start to utilize them in Command. If you need a new bio created for you, we can help with that. We can help to send off what we call a winterized database smart plan to ensure you have the most up-to-date contact info from all your contacts. But we have services all around the Command platform on here, services all around your KW technology, all right, whether it's My KW, Connect, or even Command to help you out even further. And then even services around your KW email, your website, whether you have the prior Command website or you've upgraded to the new site. And then also services around third-party requests of items we're helping out agents with now, like setting up Canva, digital business cards for you to utilize and hand out to people, Zoom accounts, and geez, Calendly accounts on here as well too. All these items are completely free for you to utilize. And of course, at the bottom of every page, we're going to have our contact information. So if you ever have any issues, questions, or concerns with any of the KW technology, please feel free to reach out to us so we can help out with that right away. All right, so if you're having an issue signing in, having an issue with your site, an issue with DocuSign, whatever it may be, let us know. We can help you out right away. And of course, all these buttons are clickable options that'll have a short form that y'all can fill out so we can get everything going right away for you. Or of course, feel free to reach out to us. We can help out with all these items immediately on here as well too. All right, so think of us as like an extra staff person to make your life that much simpler, and definitely, from those two things we put inside the chat section, definitely take advantage of that existing agent questionnaire so we can spot check everything possible for you right away. All right, but a lot of fun stuff that's happening over here and a lot of new items that we're constantly coming out with. So please feel free to check out our website as much as possible and let us know how it can help you out even further. But hopefully I'll be seeing a lot of people reaching out with new items for us to help them with. And definitely take advantage of that existing agent questionnaire. It's a great way to start your year, come out fast saying, hey, if I was starting again brand new in 2024, what all am I not utilizing quite yet? And we can help out with that immediately. So please think of us as an extra staff member to make your life that much simpler.
Fantastic. And the great thing about you, Scott, is your response time. Just love it. Your response time is amazing. Your follow-up is fantastic. Just love working with you. Thank you so much for everything that you have done for us. Thank you so far.
Yeah. No,
Does
thank
anybody
you.
have any-
I appreciate that. That's awesome. Thank you.
And does anyone have any questions for Scott while we're here? Or I'm assuming you'll probably reach out individually to him with any personal questions you may have. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank you so
that.
much.
Just a couple of things on today's call. Oops. Yeah, the next slide. Just a couple of things I want to talk to you about for the new year. I know it's the first KW Roundup. We're back in 2024. I'm really excited to have Fletcher Ellison here. He will be live here at the Wenatchee Market Center on Thursday from 1 to 2. And this is, I highly recommend it. And of course, Russ highly recommends it. Everyone highly recommends Fletcher Ellison. If you can be here, we're investing a lot of money in mindset and getting you going for the new year. So if you can, and I highly recommend it, if you can be here, please be here in person. It will not be on Zoom. We are making a call to all of you today to let you know again that Fletcher will be here live this Thursday, January 11th from 1 to 2. So let's get as many people in this office as possible. Let's get our mindset ready to go for 2024. Please make every attempt to be here.
And let us know if you're coming so we can get a head count.
Yeah, if you can just reach out to Kelly and let her know that you're going to be here, that would be great. And so we can be even more prepared for Fletcher. Thank you, you guys. The other thing that I want to talk about is our preferred vendor program. I'm not going to go through every detail of it. We have a preferred vendor program coming out that we're going to launch next week. I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about it next week. But basically, any vendors you have that think that they might be interested in getting in front of our agents, let me know. Ashley Blakely will be in charge of the vendor program. So you'd want to reach out individually to her and let her know if you have any vendors that might be interested in our preferred vendor program. We have a bronze, silver, and gold level. And of course, with every level gives you a little bit more opportunity in front of our agents and in front of at different events and so forth. So I'll go over that in depth next week. We'll also send an email out with the preferred vendor program so that you understand how it works and what the criteria is and how we can get people that are interested in either doing courses or getting in front of our agents, how they can be part of our North Central Washington team. And then we have the second, we have our preferred exclusive vendor program, and that means that if, like, for example, Prime Lending is our exclusive lender, so they pay X amount of dollars per month to be exclusive to Keller Williams. And I'll go over that program as well. So if you have somebody who's a builder, any type of vendor that just wants to be the only vendor, no other competition, then you would sign them up for the exclusive. And Ashley and I will be meeting with our preferred exclusive vendors and our vendors just to have a discussion about it. So if you have somebody, you don't necessarily have to sell them. You should know about the program. You should know how it works and how we're running it. And if you have someone, we would be happy to sit down and speak with them. Okay, and talk to them about the program, how they can get involved. It's a really great program. One of the reasons we're doing this program is obviously to bring additional money into the center. But also, we want to be able to support our vendors that are helping us on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, yearly basis. And also we want to upgrade our market center. So this will help. Those funds will help us to move to the next level and do some of the things that I've been working really hard on trying to get in this market center. So I just want you to know about it. Understand that we'll be launching it next week, and that I'll be talking a little bit more in depth about the program next week. So that's it for our KW Roundup. Anybody have any questions for me or for our staff? We have nothing? Okay. Thank you for coming. Short and sweet. Thanks to Mike and Scott and the team. We'll see you next week, same time. Make sure you get to the meeting with Fletcher this week. Thank you, you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
I talked with Ashley. She sent an email out to everybody in the company on the 29th of December saying that the link was going to disappear and you would have to go into our website and click on the calendar and the Zoom link is right there.
Oh,
She was gonna forward that email to me so I can send it out again.
okay. I don't know why it said that it was canceled. Like,
Yeah,
I get
explain
why
why
it was canceled.
Yeah, because
Thank
it
you.
was, yeah, they just canceled it off your calendar.
That calendar.
Oh.
Hey, Marcia, I think you should be able to screen share from your computer without needing permissions. I'm not positive though. There we go. But we can't hear you. I will tell you that. Oh, I guess you're muted. That's all right.
We are there. I said, when I'm taking hold, I have it all down already. Okay. A super compact car, because it was so smashed. Yeah. And then they came decide, oh no, it's like a GMC train. There's not with that. It was on OP, on an OP call. At 11? Yeah. I'll text him and say, is she good? Hi, Marcia.
I think so. You're muted.
I have already reached out to her and have not gotten a response back. So I get over to the right line because I know it's not being right. Everybody's
They're in Arizona.
to go ahead of you to merge in front of you. That makes me so mad. Okay, but here's the other side of that. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know I was gonna have to get over the right. Yeah, because I couldn't tell how.
All right. Does
Hi,
that work?
Marcia.
Good morning. Does that work?
I didn't.
Yes.
Oh, good. Is the volume good?
Yes.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, are we ready to go or do we need to wait for a specific time?
I don't get over it, I know. Yeah. I think you can start. We kind of finished early, so.
We did.
We have five people on.
Perfect. So, okay to just get started?
Yeah, let's go.
All right.
Right?
So I'm coming from downtown Phoenix and it is so beautiful here. And I don't know if you can, no, you can't. Anyways, I'm on the Plant House in their conference room. And so they accommodated me. Tom's sister does not have any internet service at all. I mean, Wi-Fi. So we had to come up here, but that's okay. As everyone knows, January 1st, it is the trigger date that we must have a signed buyer broker agreement before we start showing or doing major real estate services. And remember that really silly phrase they have, as soon as comfortably possible or some such thing. So if there's an order of events, then the very first one should be the new agency pamphlet, which I like. They did a really great job on that. And so when you're first meeting your clients, you need to really go through and explain what agency is. And then the law says that as soon as possible that we have a buyer's agent's form. Any questions on that before we get started? Everybody okay on that form for the buyer's agreement? Okay, I'm going to take that as no questions. Let me look down here. Nope. So what we're going to do today is we're just going to go through some hotline questions. This particular first one really doesn't apply to us because it's on the west side, but the answer had some really good points in it that I think we should take a look at. So pardon me while I just go through this. On the west side, they have a second home buyer market, much like we do in Leavenworth and in Lake Chelan. And so their question as they go through this, our brokerage commission policy varies for different types of properties and for locations that are not serviced by ferries. So that was why their question came in. And the thing started out with, they are looking for a home, and then they change to land, which has a different, and we do as well in the frontline team. We typically have a different commission structure for land, depending on how far away it is, and a lot of different things. And so basically what they were saying is that when you do the answer right here, the broker has proposed two potential solutions. Either would be appropriate. Broker should enter the agreement with the buyer that works best to accomplish the goals of the broker and the buyer. There is no reason that a buyer agency agreement cannot include a schedule identifying the rate of compensation based on the property type. So that would be like if you had vacant land and it was within a 5-mile radius or a 10-mile radius. I mean, you can have something typed out like that to be a part of your broker agreement. And she says there's no reason that the area for that property type can't be limited to a specific property types or specific geological areas. There's no right or wrong answer as long as the buyer agency agreement accurately reflects the goals and agreements of the parties. So if somebody starts looking at property, house property, and then they go to land, then you have it. If you find that happen a lot. And I'm just thinking that something that was new information for me was that you could put two schedules in that one and just reference it, you know, like page 3 on that. Another question regarding the Form 21, paragraph 7, compensation terms. The first question pertains to subparagraph C, compensation after expiration. That subparagraph addresses a purchase by a buyer of property during a specified period after the expiration term. So that's your tail days on there. The final section reads, provided that in either event of exclusive or non-exclusive agency, if buyer or seller pays compensation to another real estate firm representing the buyer in conjunction with that sale, the amount of compensation payable to the firm shall be reduced by that amount paid to such other firms. Can anybody tell me what that means? If you have gone, it's expired, but you're in the tail, you showed the property. Somebody explained to me their explanation of what we are afforded compensation for. Can anybody tell me?
I think that it's reduced by the amount. There's the original listing agreement, and if there's an offer to what would be the selling brokerage and how much they would get, the price that they had contracted with their buyer would be basically adjusted based on what was originally contracted in the listing. Is that right?
So if you show a property and your buyer broker agreement expires and you're in the tail period, yes, basically it's whatever is left over. And most brokers will write the offer around the amount listed. And so that was always so confusing to me. Why would they have that if the compensation would end up, let's say the compensation was, you know, that they agreed to, let's use a dollar amount, was $4,500. And their buyer agreement was for $3,500. then in that situation, then we would be able to come in and say, look, we introduced this. But more than likely what will happen is there'll be $0 there. If that makes sense. So the answer here is a broker is correct that if the buyer purchases during the tail period, compensation owing to the broker will be reduced by the compensation buyer pays to the second buyer broker, and compensation could be reduced to 0. And so it goes on. This makes sense because the broker's agreement has expired. The buyer is free to enter an agreement with another agent once the buyer's agreement with the agent expires. If the buyer does that, but purchase property introduced by the former agent, buyers will still owe compensations to the new buyer. The form is not intended to create a double obligation to buyer to pay commission. I'm not even sure, and you could check with Russ, but I'm not even sure it'd be worth it to argue on something like that. Legal cause to terminate the buyer agency agreement would be an event that excused buyer's performance. For example, if the buyer broker breaches the agreement, the broker's breach would excuse the buyer's performance. So this is all, to me, I think it's very muddy. I think it's always been muddy, and I don't think they cleaned it up as much as they possibly could. But don't just count on the fact that you have an agreement, it expires, and you have those, usually it's about 180 days tail on that, to be able to come in and get compensation. It's unfortunate, but that is what happens. Any questions on that? Okay, so some of you do commercial contracts, and so they're not a part of this Form 41. And so I thought it would be important for those of you that do work on it so that you understand. In the question, in commercial, do the same buyer's agency requirements apply? How about our clients and leases? And remember that we have our buyer agency agreement, and then the next form is if it's for a lease for a tenant. So if you are doing that type of service where you're renting it out, then there is a specific form for that. So in lieu of obtaining a services agreement, a broker rendering real estate brokerage services to a buyer solely for commercial real estate may disclose in writing to the buyer before the buyer signs an offer with regard to such commercial real estate the sources and amounts of the compensation the broker has or expects to receive from any party in conjunction with such transaction. So what she's recommending here is that if you are writing up a commercial deal where it is the building and the business, and let's just do the building, and let's say they're allowing 3.5 or 4% percentage for commission, then what you will do is in your note that you will email back and forth, but you need to have them initial it. Here are the commission structures, and this is what the seller will be paying. And then if you agree to any extra that the buyer pays, that needs to be. But what they're saying is it's now up to the broker on the commercial property to disclose where their money is coming from. The disclosure shall be set forth in a separate paragraph titled compensation disclosure. You could also put that on a Form 34. In the agreement between the buyer and seller or in a separate writing entitled compensation disclosure. And then here is the RCW reference to that. If the lease is related to commercial property, then the exception quoted above applies. If the lease is related to residential, then you must have a services agreement with that tenant prior to that. It doesn't happen a lot, but I see a few come through my desk. Okay, so this next one, do you see how big and how this writing is? This person is thinking they're an attorney. So in December 28th, she wrote a response about the Form 22Q and the Form 22E. And so he lays out article, his ideas on how he thinks he could use both. You know that when you have a 22B, you do not disclose that funds are going to come from that house on a 22EF. And the same thing is with a 22Q. And in here, she's talking about we don't ever want to use both those documents at the same time saying the same thing. Not only is it ambiguous, but a 22EF is just a statement of disclosure. A 22Q is a contingency, and you don't want to have the EF inadvertently cancel out the 22Q. So you can read this all if you really want to, but what I wanted to talk about right here, the entire purpose of including a Form 22Q in the transaction is protection of the buyer, just as including a 22B that they're going to sell a home, 22A financing, and a Form 35. These all protect the buyer. All of these contingency forms benefit buyer exclusively by giving buyer a legal excuse for closing the transaction should the triggering event occur. What is also true of all these contingencies is the seller is not obligated to grant the buyer the benefit of the contingency. So your seller doesn't have to agree to that. It's just like if they want to do a VA financing, and the VA financing where the seller has to pay a portion for the down payment and things like that, they do not have to agree that they will accept that type of financing. So the seller is not obligated to give the buyer a financing contingency and may choose not to do so if the buyer cannot demonstrate the buyer's likelihood of qualifying for the loan. And that's why, like, the vast majority of you include either an application or a pre-qualified all the way through underwriting. Those two are very different. The latter one is very, makes a very strong offer. That usually happens when they get all the way through and for some reason the house they decide not to buy, but the lender has already gone through and done all of that. So that is important. All of these contingency forms benefit the buyer. I read that. Seller is not obligated. Seller is not required to give a home buyer a home sale contingency and may choose not to do so if the buyer's property is not saleable. So to me, what that right there is saying is that before you accept it, there needs to be some information about the house and the property and maybe just to verify that if it's in this area and you know the home that's going to be listed, if you know for what amount and it's real high, that's going to take a while to sell. So the seller has the right to be able to know about that property, what it's going to be listed for, and before they even accept that offer with a 22B. Now, a 22Q, that means that they already have a contract. So the seller then is entitled to review that contract in the 22Q that needs to be included with your offer. And they can go through and they can take a look at it and see if it's something that they want to tie up their property for. So it is expected that before the seller agrees to buy the buyer's Form 22Q, seller will review a copy of the pending sale and even ask the buyer seller's estimated proceeds from the sale of the property. So it's appropriate and okay. Let's say they have a $700,000 house, but they have a $500,000 mortgage. So it's appropriate for us protecting the seller to find out what is the estimated proceeds that are going to go to at closing. With this information, the seller can evaluate the buyer's offer and proposal and continue. If the seller agrees to the 22Q, after conducting a review of the pending transaction, then the buyer has the benefit of the pending sale contingency. If the pending sale fails to close, buyer is excused from the purchase of the seller's home. So we know that if they can get out of it. And if you even get another offer, you can bump them. So if the pending sale closes, the buyer is not excused, even if the funds for the pending sale are insufficient. The triggering event for the buyer's contingency is closing on the pending sale. So if it closes and then now they're having a lender, and with that money as a down payment and their lender, they still don't qualify, then the buyer is subject to losing their earnest money. So compare all of that to Form 22EF, which is just a disclosure. It is not a contingency addendum. It does not give the buyer the benefit of any contingency. Nothing in Form 22EF says the reference funds are unavailable. Then the buyer is excused from the performance. To the contrary, the final paragraph says that if the reference funds are not available at closing for any reason, then the buyer is in default of the purchase sale. So if the buyer has funds for that, buyer is expecting to receive from the closing of the pending sale, and buyer discloses those funds on a Form 22EF, the buyer is obligated to have those funds at the closing for the purchase of the seller's property, regardless of whether the pending sale closes or fails to close. If the buyer's goal is to protect the buyer's obligation, this is really important, to close the purchase of the seller's home based on successful closing of their pending sale, then including 22EF in the transaction defeats the purpose. So we don't, if the purpose of the 22EF is to disclose the funds from the house, that isn't necessary because it's listed out on the 22Q. Questions on that? Did that make sense?
Yes.
So as a buyer broker, if you include the 22Q and the 22EF, you have put your buyer at risk. The broker argues that without a Form 22EF, seller is unable to verify buyer's funds. That's correct, because the buyer will not have the funds until the pending sale closes. So how are they supposed to verify the funds if they're not readily available? Once the pending sale is closed, buyer's contingency is satisfied and no longer benefits a buyer. So if the funds are not available even after the buyer's pending sale closes, then the buyer has no excuse for closing the transaction based on 22K. this is just reiterates, the buyer broker should never allow Form 22K and 22EF in the same transaction, identifying identical funds. Now, if it's to say that grandma's going to give a gift of $150,000, that's a different thing. But it's just using the 22Q and the 22EF to disclose the same funds. You don't ever want to do that. Now, the good thing that Tom has always taught me is that these newsletters, these hotline questions are really a good reference so that if I send you something, you can call me up and say, Marcia, the training that we've gotten is we don't ever put a 22Q or a 22EF to disclose the same funds in the same contract. Would you like a copy of the legal hotline to go over that? And then just ask if they have any questions for that. I have seen a few with the evidence of funds, primarily to identify other funds, if there's stocks or grandma's gift or whatever. Okay? So we don't include two.
I have a stupid question then probably, but so is the EF for cash, basically cash or seller contracts then? It's just not for new financing.
No, what this hotline was only if you are doing a 22Q, which means you're already pending in the buyer's home that they're selling, and they're going to rely on those proceeds to buy the new property. What that's saying is that if you're using a 22Q, you don't ever use a 22 EF to disclose the same thing. So on, I was just trying to think who it was, but somebody just submitted something where there was a I think it was a Q, and they also included an EF, and it said other, and it said funds from sale of home at such and such an address. That's already been identified on your 22Q.
Okay, so if they had additional down payment that was like stock funds or cash in the bank, then they could identify it on the EF.
Exactly. It's only making sure we don't use two documents to identify one source of funds.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay. Okay, this one to me was a little bit confusing. I'm confused about the portion of the new 41. The buyer signs an exclusive agency agreement with me, and I show buyer homes that then they decide to terminate their agreement with me and sign a buyer's exclusive agreement with another agent. And in parentheses, I love this, usually a family member who just started selling. First time I read that, I thought it said spelling, but that's pretty accurate for brand new brokers. What happens when the agent number 2 writes up a purchase and sale on a property I showed during the time they had signed agreement with me? Okay. Will you advise on this whole process? Terminating, expiring, and procuring cause. If the parties terminate the buyer's agency agreement using a Form 53 termination of buyer broker services agreement, then the parties will have agreed as follows. Notwithstanding the foregoing, the compensation after expiration provision in the agreement shall continue to be effective as provided in this agreement. The date of the expiration of the term of the agreement shall be the date that this termination of the buyer brokerage service agreement is mutually accepted by the firm and the buyer. So that if you have an agreement that goes out 90 days and you've shown them property, and then a relative says, hey, what about me? Let me write that up. If you agree to a Form 33, then that date then becomes the termination of the services agreement. Okay. Now, with that language, termination and expiration are treated identically, with the date termination being the date of expiration or the date of that Form 53. If the broker agrees to terminate the buyer agency agreement in some other way other than using a Form 53, then the broker retains no contractual claim to compensation. So if they terminate and ask to be terminated because they don't want to work with us anymore, then we need to have that Form 53. If you just do it with a form like 19, where it cancels it and you have the sellers, the brokers, and the designated brokers' initials or signatures on them, and then you don't do anything else, and you don't use that Form 53, then you have you don't have any contractual claim to the compensation. This was interesting. It's not clear why the broker would be so automatic in the broker's response to terminate the buyer agency agreement simply because the buyer asked. If the buyer no longer wishes to work with a broker, so be it. Well, that's what we're saying here. Broker and buyer can amend their buyer agency agreement at that point by reducing the area covered to the agreement of the specified property addresses already shown by the current broker. With that, assuming the agency agreement is exclusive, broker will be contractually entitled to compensate for properties broker showed to the buyer for the remainder of the term of the policy agreement. Buyer will also be free to view other properties with other brokers. The procuring cause doctrine will have substantially reduced application in light of changes to the law and forms. So I know that for the 13 years that we've worked with Russ, if a buyer wants to get out of the listing, he's always been very accommodating on that. Any questions on that? It's kind of chicken, you know what, when they do that, but that happens.
I have a question, Marcia.
Yes.
So, hi.
Hi.
What about on the listing side? What I haven't done any research as of yet, but I have some acquaintances that have had a home listed with another agent that it is now currently, it just expired at the beginning of the year. Is there a certain time period that they need to wait before they relist? And when they do, they want to relist with me. So is there anything I need to be looking out for?
That is a wonderful question. So then you, for me, I would really like to see the paperwork they signed closing that.
He's looking
See
for
the
it.
listing agreement and then the paperwork they signed to cancel that listing. And in that will be a tail provision. You're bringing new buyers, so and that's your job. So you just have to make sure that I'm talking myself in a circle here. As a listing broker, I cancel and I go to you. And you had two questions. One of them is how soon can I relist? And
Yeah, no. So I have some potential new clients that are listing their home. It has expired with the previous broker.
okay, so that agreement is done.
Done, totally, but that doesn't, okay. If the listing expired, then I don't have to worry about them canceling their relationship with this other broker before I list their home again.
I need to find out on that. I would say that we could go ahead and list with them. We can see that it's expired.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna have to look at that. That's a great question, and I don't want to give you just what I think is a good answer.
I appreciate that. I just wasn't sure if, because sometimes, when someone takes it off the market, it has to be off for so many days before it can go back on. I don't know if that necessarily applies to when a listing expires.
Okay, so if you put it on, if you put that on prior to 90 days, then it will pick up the cumulative days on market
Okay,
from before.
okay, I think that we'll be in the clear for that.
Okay, so, oh, and it's been longer than 90 days?
No, the listing expired, I want to say January 1st
Okay,
or December 30th or something. It was like right at the first of the year.
sure.
But they're not looking to do anything until probably April-ish.
Oh, sure. Then you'll be
March
fine.
or April.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you don't have to
so-
do anything special.
Okay, I just wanted to see when the line was so that if they decide they're ready in March, I need to make sure to tell them that it will pick up. If it hasn't been 90 days, then it will pick up how many days it was on market last time.
That's correct.
So 90 days is
Yeah.
what I'm looking
So
for.
nothing prettier than April 1st. Oh,
Okay.
and then you have to make sure to account for the short days in February.
February, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
okay.
All
Good
right, thank you.
question. Yeah, see, this is what Amanda and I do all the time. She calls and literally together we work through all of these. Does anybody have a licensed assistant? Vanessa, do we have any of those in our office besides yourself?
I'm not licensed. I don't know if any of the people have a licensed assistant, that they have personal assistants. Like I know there's 3 or 4 agents that have their own assistants they pay. I don't know if those people are licensed, but I'm not. I'm in school at the moment, but that's
Okay.
kind of slow going with everything
So,
else.
because we're going to kick ass in 2024, I thought this would be a good one for you that need to hire assistants, licensed assistants. And it says, prior to the January 1 changes, we would use a Form 1S to formally identify them as her subagents to the seller. Now the 1S has gone away. What's the proper way to identify them? So in the future, when you get so busy, you have to hire licensed assistants, then you should use Form 18 to amend the listing agreement. And there's a section there that says others as additional agents of the seller. If the assistants will provide something less than the full spectrum of duties owned by a listing broker to a seller under the agency law, the broker should use other provision to define the services that the assistants shall provide. So to be really safe, like if you were to, Amanda, if you were to say, as Marcia Brasher as a sub-agent has been assigned to work with you as a seller, and then you would be able to, because I'm licensed, then you could list out all the things that I can do. And so this is a little bit different than what they had before when we just added a name to Form 1S. All right, anticipation 2024. Hope everybody had a wonderful Christmas. We had amazing time with our children and grandchildren, and then we all got the Christmas virus, and everybody except for my son from Atlanta and his family was sick for 10 days. So I'm glad we had a good time. Any last minute questions? I would ask, are you all filling out those buyer agency agreements before you do much work? Is that a yes for an affirmative.
I wish I had a buyer to do it for.
Excellent.
I was
But
gonna
yeah.
say, as soon as I have some, I will be.
Yep.
Good, good. Any
I
other
think-
question, any other questions? Any comments, Tom?
Thank
All right.
you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. And thank you for letting me do this from Phoenix. And we'll be back in full mode on Monday. And so I'll see everyone on Tuesday at the Roundup. I almost called it something else. All right, everybody have a fantastic week. I'm still available this week, still reviewing contracts. And so if you have a question, give me a call. I really, and then if I'm doing something with our Tom's sister, then I'll get back to you as soon as I can. All right,
Thank you, Marcia.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we're
Okay.
thinking of you. We're thinking of you and we miss you.
We're coming back. We just had a 10-day black hole that we went into. Alrighty, well, listen, everybody have a great day, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.
Alrighty, bye.
Bye-bye.
I haven't heard from them since December.
Yeah, I don't think they were gone.
Yeah, I don't think I talked to them. Yeah, before Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she's been available, but,
Yeah,